Hi, friends. It's Carol Leatham, and welcome back to the Caretaker's Journey podcast, where we walk together through the sacred, the messy, and the beautiful moments of caregiving. Today's episode is a special replay, one that was recorded over a year ago, but continues to bless me deeply. It was one of those conversations that reshaped how I thought about caretaking, not just as a season of exhaustion and loss, but as a time when God was renewing my mind and growing something new in me. When I first shared this message, my mom was still alive. I didn't know how much I would come to lean on the truths that we talk about in this episode after she passed. Listening to it again this week, I found myself nodding through tears, reminded that even though the circumstances have changed, God's word and his care for us have not. As a caretaker, we can easily slip into a mindset of survival, just trying to make it through the next appointment, the next sleepless night, the next emotional wave. But today, I want to invite you to pause and ask, what if God is inviting us to think differently? What if we could begin to see this journey not as something happening to us, but something He's working through us? This episode is all about changing our thinking, shifting from fear to faith, from frustration to gratitude, and from control to surrender. We're going to talk about how our thoughts shape our days, how renewing our minds can renew our hope, and how small shifts in perspective can bring peace, even in the hardest moments. So, whether you're in the thick of caretaking right now or walking through the quiet after, I pray that this replay meets you right where you are, just as it did for me. God isn't asking us to have it all together. He's asking us to let Him change how we see it all. Grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's step into this replay of changing our thinking as a caretaker. I think it's going to bless you as much as it blessed me.
Hi, I'm Gaye Lindfors, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast.
Welcome to this week's Meaningful Conversation. I'm your host, Carol Leatham. As a caretaker, have you ever asked this question? Lord, how do I fix this? Well, I know I have, and significant moments prompted today's guest to change this question in her life from Lord, how do I fix this? To Lord, what do you want me to know? God is so faithful to show us who He has called us to be and what He has called us to do, even when we're caretaking, and even when that becomes such a significant part of our lives. When life shifts, how do we keep going? How do we continue with the calling that God has placed on our heart? In her new book, Anticipate God's Goodness, Letters of Encouragement to Ignite Your Spirit, our guest today, Gaye, offers suggestions and encouragement for reigniting your spirit. In our conversation today, she's going to help you listeners rekindle your desire to say yes to God, identify ways to settle those setbacks that every one of us as caretakers face, and then offer practical action prompts and resources that are going to keep us going. My guest, Gaye, has a love for God's word and the wit, and I tell you, she's funny. We've had many conversations before this recording, and she is funny, and I love that about her. She has a wit that she's known for, and Gaye will help you discover the hope-filled connection between God's faithfulness and your daily living. Not afraid to poke fun of her own mishaps, she delivers a blend of Bible teaching, life stories, and humor through her books and messages. How cool is it that she's going to teach us how to laugh at ourselves and say, yeah, we all do it? Gaye has served as Midwest Regional Director for Christian Women in Media, is the past president of the National Speakers Association in Minnesota, and she's led a human resource team that has supported 11,000 airline employees. Now that's a job. Her latest book is filled with real life encouragement. Anticipate God's Goodness, Letters of Encouragement to Ignite Your Spirit. So, welcome to the show, Gay, today, and I'm looking forward to some encouragement.
Oh, Carol, this is going to be fun. Thank you so much.
We always have a good time when we
Yes,
talk, and that's one of the
yes,
fun things is I like for my listeners to feel like we're just having a cup of coffee and we're just all sitting around. So, Gay, I want to start out because from the moment I met you, your journey has inspired me. So, tell us about your faith journey, and you sometimes describe it as saying yes to God.
yes, yes.
So, tell us about that.
Well, I grew up in a small town in northwestern Minnesota, and my parents loved God, were faithful to his calling, and I had a good childhood. I would say though my parents lost several children when they were babies
Oh,
and toddlers. So we went through
wow.
a time when I was growing up that was really hard, but they always taught me that God is faithful. God is faithful no
Mhm.
matter what. So growing up, I learned to love Jesus and went through some normal high school, college, growing up, but overall, I love God. Well, when
Oh.
my dad died about 20 years ago, but my mom, about 10 years ago, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it
Oh.
came to my sisters and I to become her caregivers, eventually
Mhm.
24/7. And that kind of
Wow.
was, as I'm sure for you and for many of our listeners, that kind of puts a whoa, I didn't see that coming into
Yeah.
our lives, right? And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
yeah, a big whoa. And all of a sudden, this phrase that God is faithful, we think, really? This 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 is not supposed to happen. But um I learned through that he is faithful. And it was during her the last part of her um illness, before she died, the things got just a little wonky, and we realized, wow, we're just losing mom here faster than we thought. But
Yeah.
I was her primary caregiver, so I had moved into her apartment with her, just a few
Wow.
miles from where my husband and I live. And I really just had to kind of take my whole business and move there. And she became my world. And after she
Wow.
died, I thought, "Okay, Lord, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." I felt lost. My primary
Yeah.
responsibility was no longer here, and I felt lost. And that's when I realized I needed to find another reason to say yes to God. I needed something. And if you'd like, I can tell you about that little moment that changed my trajectory. My
Yeah, I
faith.
would love that.
All
Share
right.
that with us.
So this was about a year after mom died. And my sister and I were at my nephew's triathlon watching him race. And we watched a group of middle aged women come out of the water, out of the swimming part of the race, and they were
Mhm.
running towards the bikes. And a lot of the racers had those fancy zip swimming gear
Yes.
that they had on, and then they ran to their bikes and they were clipping in their shoes and all this. Well, this group of women, they were wearing, I think, swimsuits, one-piece suits that they just bought at Target, and they got to their bikes. They didn't change clothes, and they didn't have any clip-on shoes. They just got on their bikes in their swimsuits, put on their flip-flops or their sneakers, and they started running. And it triggered something in me that said, "Wow, they are getting up and going." And I turned to
Yeah.
my sister Julie and I said, "I wanna be like that." And I thought,
Mm.
was that hard for them to do? Yes. Did they wanna quit? Yes. But they got up
Mm.
and they went. And I thought,
Mhm.
"Gay, it's time for you to get up and go. You need to
Ugh.
just say yes to God and get up and go." And that's what changed my world, my faith.
Wow. I love that. I actually interviewed an Ironman yesterday.
Did you really?
And his interview will, I don't know if it's gonna air before this one or not, but it was the most inspiring. He's an
Mhm.
Ironman, who became Ironman after he got brain cancer, terminal brain
Oh,
cancer.
God bless him.
And I'm familiar with the
Mm,
whole triathlon and Ironman races,
Mhm.
and I love that picture of these because I've seen them get out with their fancy clothes and their
Yeah.
fancy shoes and all that.
Mhm.
So that's inspiring to me to think that these normal everyday women just came out of the water. So I want to back up for a second and talk about when you were caring for your mom,
Mhm.
because you and I have had this conversation and you had a very unique situation happen where your mom lived very close to you
Mhm.
and you and your husband lived in a house maybe a mile away,
Mhm.
and you ended up moving from your house with your husband to the house with your mom.
Mhm.
And so talk us through how did that happen, and how did your husband and you how did you guys come to that decision, and how did that work?
Yeah. Oh, good questions. So for a few years, mom was able to be on her own, and I would run over there in the mornings and check on her. But it became
Yeah.
clear pretty fast, and the doctors told us she can't be on her own. Mom never
Mhm.
tried to run away, but she would get forgetful, and she was
Yeah.
starting to fall, and, she 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 just couldn't remember, it was Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
she couldn't remember. So, we
Yeah.
decided that we needed to move in. Well, because she was so close to me and I was running my own business, I had a consulting business, so I was able
Okay.
to just move over to her apartment, and I was there most of the week, but my other one of my sisters who lives here in town would come for a couple nights. She's a
Okay.
flight attendant though, so we couldn't come up with a schedule like this week I'm here and there. We worked around her flying and all of that stuff, which was great. But she'd come for a couple nights a week, and then my other
Yeah.
sister would come for a few weeks in the most of the summer. But at
Okay.
the time I was there, until the last year or so, in the morning, I'd get up and get mom up, and then I would get in my car and drive past Caribou, pick my husband up a Caribou coffee latte with vanilla, and then we'd get home and we'd have coffee together and sit and catch up, and then I'd go back to mom's. And then there were times that I had
Wow.
consulting meetings. Steve would come over to mom's and sit with her, and she loved that.
Wow.
She just loved being Stevie boy, as she called him. So that's kinda how we worked
Oh,
it out until the last couple years. Then it was I couldn't run home anymore. And I will say, Steve and we got to that decision without any stress or consternation. He's a saint,
yeah.
and we don't have children.
Yeah.
Grown-up children or young children, that made it easier, and we just
Yeah.
decided this is what we do. And I'll just one add to that, a month after mom died, we went into lockdown COVID, and
Yes.
Steve's mom was living in a senior citizen apartment building, and we realized she didn't wanna be locked into her room, so she came to live with us, and she lived with us for a few months, and then finding out she had COVID while she was here, so I went right back into caretaking mode with his mom, which was just fine. But anyway, that's how we made it work. So I worked out of, her apartment. So I
I
do have
I
can I
love
tell you
that.
one funny story about how I
Yeah,
had to
please.
adjust? So, I
Please.
was on the phone a lot interviewing candidates, and, I was doing headhunting a lot of the time, helping people get connected to a
Yeah.
company I was working for. And I would always tell mom, so I had my card table set up right in front of her chair, and I would tell her, "Mom, I'm going to be on the phone now, and you're going to be quiet, and I will be with you in about a half hour, and you're going to be just fine." And she would say yes, and then I'd get on the phone and I'd start my call, and I would see mom start to get up, and I think, "No, no, 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 no," 'cause she could get up on her own. And then almost every time she would just yell out, "I gotta go potty." And, "Oh, no." Okay, and there was no telling her she couldn't get up and go. So, I would have to explain to the person I was talking with and apologize, and everyone was gracious, but then I'd get her up to do her thing, and we'd come back, and then I'd call them back, but my word, it was always an adventure, it was always something coming up. But
that brings up something my sister and I constantly remind each other of, and that is that there are going to be these times where I don't care because we're both we're in the trenches right now with our own
of
mother,
course,
and
yeah.
I live in California, and my mom lives in Milwaukee, and the listeners are aware that I spent I've already spent 2 full months,
Mm,
in Milwaukee
mhm,
in, April and July, and now my mom is on hospice,
mhm,
and it's kind of helped her come to this, like, fragile stability, but there are times where things just happen,
mhm.
and you have to laugh.
Yes.
You just cannot take them serious, and I remember my mom, just some of the things that she says, and I think I shared this on a previous show, but I'm gonna say it again. My mom, when I came home in July, the very first week I came home, and we were kinda settling into hospice, the hospice nurse showed up for a visit, and she calls me and she goes, "Carol, we can't find your mom." And I go, "What do you mean you can't find my mom?" "Well, I'm in her apartment and she's gone, the scooter's gone." And I said, "Well, she's probably down in the dining room, so just go down to the dining room and see if you can find her, and then go to the front desk." And I know the guy's name at the front desk. I said, "Talk to
Mhm.
so and so, and he will probably know my mom's schedule because she's pretty active there." So, I didn't hear anything for about 45 minutes, and I thought, "Oh, they found her. She's back in her apartment. It's fine." I get this call from the hospice nurse, and she's like, "Okay, we've been looking for 45
Oh,
minutes, and we
no.
cannot find your mom."
Oh, no.
She goes, "Can you think of any friends?" They're starting to make a list of the people that she socializes with and figure out where they are. And I'm like, "No." So the main nurse, who kind of heads up her care, was off, and so they called her at home and said, "Can you think of anything that she might have done or
Mhm.
gone to? Is there someplace?" About that time, she's now been gone for almost an hour that
Okay.
they know of. This man comes in and he says, "Hey, there's a resident in the alley behind. I've called 911. They were on their scooter. They drove off the curb. The scooter fell over, and my
Oh,
wife is with her. She seems fine, but we've got." My mom had not only gone outside on her scooter, which is not supposed to happen, but she had gone all the way around this huge complex to the very back side of the building in an alley and fallen off. Her scooter had driven off the sidewalk. And so she had laid there for 45 minutes.
oh,
But
dear.
you know what? My sister and I had to laugh. She didn't break anything.
Mhm,
She got one little cut on her arm that we're still kind of wrestling with because her skin is so fragile,
mhm,
but my sister and I had to really kind of stop once we realized she was fine and kinda laugh about,
mhm.
was she trying to escape? Because we would ask her, "What were you thinking?" And then the stories started, and every one of us got a different story of what happened. So we're really not sure exactly what happened, but we do know that they found her, and I think you have to
You
laugh,
do.
and so it would have been great had you had a video of that because
Oh,
it was
really?
one of those COVID videos that would have gone viral
Yes. Yes, exactly.
of your mom
Yes.
of your mom doing that. Well, Kate, let's talk for a second about the shift
Mhm,
from, "Lord, how do I fix this?" Because I have said that.
mhm,
In fact, I was saying it this morning. "Lord,
mhm,
how do I fix this? I'm in
mhm,
California. She's in Milwaukee. I can't just teleport myself there."
mhm,
But how did you shift from the question, "Lord, how do I fix this?" to, "What do you want me to know?"
mhm. Well,
That's a
part
great
of
shift.
part of it is I think I'm the oldest child,
Okay.
and I have a great sense of, Midwestern work hard, get it done, farm girl,
Yeah.
we can do this. So when mom, especially when her health started getting worse, I kept thinking, this can't, how do we fix this? I kept focusing on
Mhm.
fixing this. Like, no, mom, you have to get up and walk. You've got to get up and do this. You have to eat because I was
Mhm.
trying to fix it. And she would get just more annoyed the more we tried to do that, especially as she got sicker. She just didn't want to eat. So I
Right.
realized I can't fix it. I remember she would drink Glucerna though, strawberry
Yes.
Glucerna. And she always liked to take it to bed with her. So she'd have it. And we would wake up in the morning and there would be Glucerna all over the bed, and 'cause
Yeah.
she'd spilled it. And I think, Lord, this has to just not happen again and again. How do I fix this? And I
Right.
finally realized I can't. And that goes
Right.
back to saying yes to God and realizing
Mhm.
we cannot fix their disease. We can't change it. We can't control it. In fact, that
Yeah.
was when
So
she
true.
was sick and I was taking care of her is when I wrote my book, Getting My Ducks in a Row and Other Stories of Faith, because we can't get our ducks in a row. We can't. We might get them in the same pond and then someone moves the pond. We just can't. So we have to stop trying to fix and control. And then I realized I need to instead say, Lord, I don't know what to do in this moment. What do you want me
Yeah.
to know? And he would tell me, if I would listen, what he wanted me to know, and then I would know how to pray. And then I could
That's so
address the
good.
situation knowing this is what he wants me to do rather than me trying to control everything.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. So let's talk for a second about your book, Getting My Ducks in a Row and Other Stories of Faith, because I think as caretakers, we do
Mhm,
fall into that
mhm,
mindset of, I got to get these ducks in a row.
mhm.
And I love when you said you can get them all in the same pond. I can't get them all in the same pond.
Right,
I can't even get them all in the same state.
right, right,
I
right.
can't get them all in the same state. And I sometimes I sit here, this morning, my mom was having a bad day. She was
Mhm,
just having a bad morning, and
mhm,
one of her nurses showed up, and it was time to help get her dressed and whatever. My mom was sitting in the chair, didn't want to do it
mhm,
and just didn't wanna do it, and so finally the nurse left and called me and she goes, "I don't know what to do," and I'm like, "Just let her." I said, "She's having a rough morning, just
mhm,
let it go. Just let
mhm,
it go. She'll be fine.
mhm,
She'll either snap out of it or she won't."
mhm.
And so let's talk for a second about how we move out of the pressure of trying to get our ducks in a row, because I have seen all kinds of memes about,
Yes,
my ducks aren't even a row. I don't even know if I have ducks. Where are my ducks?
right. I got
So
squirrels.
how do yeah, I just oh, wait, that's not a duck, that's
Uh-huh.
a So how do we move out of the pressure of trying to get our ducks in a row or get our act together
Mhm,
when we're just trying to keep up with what's a new normal in caretaking? And really, normal is a tricky
mhm.
word because every day looks different.
Right, right. We have to really make sure that we're changing our mindset, how we think
Uh,
about the situation we are in, because our
yes.
natural tendency is to protect and do everything we
Mm,
can for the person that we're caring for. We don't want them to hurt.
yes.
We don't want them to forget. We don't want them to have bed sores. We don't want that for them.
Yeah.
So we try and fix it. And what
Yes.
we need to realize is we can't, like we were talking about
Mhm.
before, and then we have to change our thinking because otherwise we will
Yes.
stay in that I have to control this, I have to fix this. So
Mhm.
we change our thinking to realizing I am not in control. I have to
Yeah.
remember that God is in control. He has not forgotten this moment. He hasn't forgotten my mom, and he needs to show me what he wants me to do. We can't. But
Mm,
what happens if we try and fix and control, we are missing those very sacred and challenging moments that God is presenting
mm.
us in that illness, in that disease. Because there
I
are
love that.
beautiful moments
Yes.
in those
Yes.
times, but if we're trying to fix it, we're going to miss it. So it goes back to
Oh.
changing our thinking to say, God, I release this to you. I open my
Mhm.
hands and I give you this glucerna spill moment. I give you this need to go potty moment. And I'm saying,
Yes.
meet me here. What do you want me to
Yes.
know? Show me how to love my mom
Mm,
in the way that she
mm.
needs to be loved in this moment.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. I think another thing, that kinda came to my mind is this idea of identity,
Mhm,
because you had your own business.
mhm,
You were living a mile down the road with your husband. You
mhm.
had everything set up the way you wanted it to set up. I I the same thing. I have my studio here at home. I'm comfortable in my little office. I love to write here. I love to do all the things
Yes.
that I can do here in this room. And when I leave, it's so hard because I go there and my identity is oldest child,
Mhm,
big sister.
mhm.
My mom will get mad at me sometimes and she'll say to her nurse, "She's the difficult one."
Oh,
She'll say, "She's the difficult one.
oh,
She's the mean one."
oh,
One time she called me a general. She called me the angry general, and
oh.
and and her nurse is standing over there behind her just kind of trying not to crack up because she knows it's not true. But
Mhm,
how does I mean, our identities change as we walk. You were driving 1 mile down the road
mhm.
from your home and your business to your mom, and your identity is changing with
Yes.
mile or a quarter mile or, as you get closer and closer. Mine is when I get on the plane, my identity starts changing.
Yes.
How do you deal with this changing identity in the role of caretaker? And what did that look like for you as,
Mhm.
a businesswoman with your
Mhm.
own consulting company?
Mhm. It was hard. And when like I say, I just kind of moved my business over to mom's. She had an extra bedroom, a second bedroom. So when my sisters and I were there, we were able to stay have a place to sleep in the bedroom. But I
Yeah.
set the card table up, and that's where I worked from. And,
Mm,
but so much of my identity, Carol, because we didn't have children, my identity was a lot in my work, and I'd worked hard in
yes.
my career, and,
Mhm.
I had a good thing going, so to speak, and when
Mhm.
that shifted because of those potty moments, or not being able
Yes.
to take on work because I
Yeah.
didn't have the time, I started to think, "Boy, who even am I then?" Because
Uh,
this is not what I thought my life would look like. This even though and that
uh,
was it was never I was never angry at mom for it, though. I never,
right.
was a no despise I never despised her. It wasn't that, it was just, "Who am I?" And I had to
Mhm.
pull myself out of all of the organizations that I was in, either as a volunteer or as a leader. I had to step out of them
Mhm.
because I just didn't have the time anymore. That was a shift. So when I shifted out of that, I lost some of those connections. And then I
Yes.
wasn't going to any events because I was with mom. I lost those being with friends. So that
Yeah.
was all very different. And God had to really work in my heart on that my identity is not my job. That's just one way I show up and show my
Mhm.
identity. My identity is in a daughter of the living king. And that is
Yes.
who I am. But it took a while. What I what I did have to do, though, is find ways to connect with my girlfriends, and that became
Yes.
an important part, even if it was one-on-one, just
Mhm.
on the phone, and
Mhm.
my sisters and I are very close, and we were always there for each other, but the identity shifted, and I had to realize, yeah, I'm more than my work. That was a big shift, and I am a daughter of the king.
Mm,
I have a calling on my life, and right now,
mm.
calling has placed me in this living room on a card table with my mom, and I'm going to engage in it. I'm going to embrace it.
Oh,
Shift mine a bit
that
of
is
my
so
shift.
that is, and it's so beautiful, and I think as caretakers, what you're talking about is so critical,
Mhm,
because in January, I had to make the same mind shift,
mhm.
and I I remember getting off the plane in January for my very first trip. My mom, I've made multiple trips, like double-digit trips in 2 years to from California to Milwaukee, and I remember getting off the plane, and it was fun because I was expecting to go out to dinner because it was an early arrival, and so my sister picks me up, and we're gonna go have dinner. I know we're gonna go to one of our favorite little restaurants, which I have favorite restaurants in Milwaukee,
Of course.
you know, and she said, "Oh," she had just moved into an apartment. Her husband had suddenly passed away a few months before, and so she had just moved into an apartment, and, she said, "Oh, we need to make a stop on the way to dinner." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "I have to buy a couch." And she goes, "I need you to go with me to buy the couch." And so we get into this furniture store, and she'd already kinda picked out 3 couches that she liked, but she was not gonna purchase a couch until I got there because I had to lay down in the furniture store and test each one out and tell her which one I wanted to sleep on
Oh,
because she was buying a couch for her living room knowing that I was going to be the one sleeping
oh,
on it
oh.
when I went there. And I loved that moment
Mhm,
of just adjustment. Okay, this is my life. And when I'm there, I love what you said about being intentional about connecting because God, the same thing. I was very active in my church here and teaching Bible studies and all of these connections and ministering.
mhm.
And I just had such a great network of people, and then all of a sudden, I couldn't do it anymore because I can't take care of my husband. I can't take care of my mom. I can't, travel back and forth. I can't do the speak. I can't do all of the things that God is opening the doors for me to do. And something had to go. And I lost a lot of connections. And so now I'm having to be very, 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 very deliberate about, oh, I'm going to put Gay on my calendar because we need to have a Zoom
Right.
coffee call so that
Right.
we can catch up.
Right.
And I love when I can open up my calendar for the month and go, oh, okay, I'm going to have a Zoom coffee call with Gay. I'm going to have a Zoom coffee call with Kanita. And I can
Mhm.
see where I am intentionally
Mhm.
connecting. And more, I'm so thankful for technology because sometimes that's the only thing that keeps us connected
Mhm.
when we get into these caretaking situations.
Mhm.
So, I want to also talk about your new book. In your new book, Anticipate God's Goodness, you write that you want to start a movement. And I like this,
Mhm.
inviting women to stop waiting for life to show up and instead show up and find life. Now, I think this probably tags in with these women that you saw getting out of the water with their normal shoes and their normal swimsuits and jumping on bikes. But tell us, go into more deep detail about what this movement looks like that you're really challenging us to do.
Yes, and it does, and that was the first moment watching those women that sparked this little thought in me. We need to be more like those women. I think so many
Mhm.
of us wait until our ducks in a row, or we wait until life is perfect, or if we wanna start our own business until we've got everything set up, or if we wanna start,
Mhm.
doing a hobby, we wanna start tap dancing or crocheting, whatever it is, but we have to get everything
Yeah.
perfect first. And my suggestion is let's just stop waiting and let's go
Yeah.
with what we've got and start doing.
Yeah.
We spend so much time in the waiting room waiting because we
Yes.
wanna make sure it's perfect. We wanna make sure it's right. And we wanna make sure
Mm.
that we're ready. And I'm suggesting, you know what? God has put a calling on our lives. And he is
Yes.
saying, get up and go. Get up and
Mm.
do. And for us to say, yeah, but I'm not quite ready. That's saying to God, yeah, but your timing is wrong. My timing is
Yeah.
better. And that's just not right.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yes.
saying we've got something. God has given us gifts. We don't have to wait until we
Mhm.
can find a cure for cancer. What we can do is we can
Mhm.
slide in the pew next to the woman who we think is having a bad day. We can walk down the
Yeah.
block to the neighbor. We can go to
Mm.
the food kitchen. Takes nothing extra. And then we look at the
Mhm.
gifts that he has given us, whether it's writing, speaking, singing,
Mhm.
showing up, writing the cards, and we get up and go instead of waiting. And I think part
Yeah.
of what shifted in that for me was going from this, I need to fix something, I need to get ready,
Mm.
I need to control it, to Lord, what do you want
Mhm.
me to know? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And that, we stop waiting for life to show up. Let's get on our bikes, put on our flip-flops and start biking. Let's go and get up and go.
Yeah.
And when we do
Yeah.
that, we start to discover life.
Absolutely. And I think I will put myself in this hot seat here and I will say that I have been guilty
Mhm,
of saying, "Oh, I can't do that. I need to be here. Oh, I can't do that." I remember shortly after my husband came home from the psychiatric hospital and he was still very, very much struggling. And I got invited to go to a Bible study at the church. And it was on a Wednesday morning for 2 hours. And I was like, "I don't even know how I'm gonna walk away and have 2 hours." And I know as a caretaker, that's one of the things. How do we do it?
mhm,
And then I remember God saying, "How do you not do this, Carol?
mhm,
Because you need community. And this is where you're going to find community." And I remember Jane, Mama Jane, I remember I was sitting at her table and I remember that she would just reach over and put her hand on my arm. And I never said a word, which is so rare for me to be in a group of women and not speak.
mhm,
And I just showed up and I stayed for an hour, but here's what was so funny is that I couldn't really leave my husband at home, and I didn't know what to do because I wasn't supposed to leave him, like, whatever, and, I needed to be close. That's what the psychiatrist had told me, "You need to be close," and I can imagine with your mom, you need to be
mhm.
close. So he brought his books, and he would sit in the car under the tree with his cell phone and I would text him, "Okay, I'm gonna be out in 10 minutes. I'm gonna be out in 5 minutes. I'm gonna be out." And then I would just kinda stay for as long as I felt like I could. and then I would go and he would be sitting in the car reading his books.
Oh,
And we did that for 5 months.
wonderful. Wow.
Every week on Wednesday morning. So I think that when we get into this mindset you're talking about, we get creative with how
Mhm,
we're going to deal with this.
mhm.
And I remember we had Disneyland passes at that time, and he could not handle the noise, and he couldn't handle the chaos. But there's a little spot on Main Street in Disneyland where they have rocking chairs, and I bought him a pair of noise canceling earphones, and I would get there early. I would take my grandchildren, my little grandchildren, and we would get there early, and I would prop him with his noise canceling earphones on this rocking chair on Main Street, and I would say, "Just stay here. I'm going to go do this." And then we would come back and check on him.
Yes.
But I think you have to get creative,
Mhm,
and it's easier sometimes to just sit in the
mhm.
house, but I think if we get creative, then it's more important because then we get out.
Yeah.
So, you talk about settling your setbacks.
Mhm,
So, what does that look like? Talk
mhm.
to us about settling your setbacks.
If we want to say yes to God, that means we are wholeheartedly saying, "Yes, God, I release everything
Mm,
I am to you." We can't
mm,
do that unless we have settled what's going on in our heart, those weeds that we need to
mhm.
pull up and to plow out. You know, we need to
Yes.
get rid of the sin that so easily entangles us. So we have
Mhm,
to think about, what is it that's keeping me from God? What is it that when I hand him, put out my hands and I say, "Here, God, this is yours," I find myself pulling back one of my hands, and except for this, I still need to kind of take care of my mom, so we aren't really saying yes to God. And that really
yes.
starts with
Mhm,
confession and repentance. We have to settle
mm,
those things that are keeping us from really knowing and leaning into God as He has called us to lead. So it's confess
mhm,
the lies that we are believing, and
mm,
replacing them with the truths that God has said in His Word. And then we repent of those lies, those sins,
mhm,
and we say, "Okay, I'm moving forward." We got to settle those
mm.
setbacks.
I love that. And I think we have to have people around us that we trust who will
Mhm,
speak truth to us. I know my sister and I, our relationship has completely changed since we've been caring for our mom. We grew up in a very tumultuous life. We did not have a good relationship with our mom. And that has all changed in the
mm,
last 2 years. It has brought my sister and I closer to each other, and we have a relationship because we sort of locked arms, like what you described with your sisters. We kind of locked arms and just said, "We're gonna do this together."
mhm,
And so nothing happens that we don't communicate about, even the smallest little thing we
yeah,
communicate. And we're very careful to make sure everybody gets both of us get the same information
mhm,
from each other, so we're always there. But what's interesting is that there are times when I get into what I call my pit bull mode, and I'm, like, gripping. I've got my jaws around this, and I am not letting go for anything, and I am pushing, pushing, pushing for resolution.
mhm,
And my sister will just quietly, I remember this happened when I was in Milwaukee, she just quietly comes out and sits down in the chair and says, "Hey, let's think about this for a second."
ah,
And then she tells me very calmly, she's not telling me anything about me, but she's saying, "Let's think about this for a
mhm,
minute. What if?"
mhm,
And then I'll look at her and I'll go, "Okay, thank you. Because what you've just done is helped me realize that I'm spinning, I'm locked on, I'm trying to solve it, I'm not trusting God.
mhm,
And so thank you for sort of pulling me back into reality." And I think that what you've just described about settling your setbacks is we just naturally wanna fix it. We go back all the way to the beginning. We wanna fix it, and we
mhm,
can't. So, if you could, as we kind of wrap up today, I think you and I could talk for hours about this. If you could just tell the caretakers out there who are listening one thing to help them
mhm,
keep going
mhm,
during their caretaking season, because sometimes we just feel like we just can't do it one more second. What would be one thing you could just encourage the caretaker out there
mhm.
who's feeling like, I know we have caretakers who are caring for Alzheimer's, cancer patients. We have listeners who I know have children with disabilities,
Mhm.
and I know that there are caretakers who are, have health issues. And so, what would you tell that caretaker who's like at the end of their rope and just feels like they can't go on?
Oh, God bless you, listener, first of all. And I would say,
Uh,
as a piece of encouragement, you are not alone. God has not
uh,
forgotten you. He sees you. He knows what's
uh,
going on with the person you're caring for, and in your heart, he sees you. He hasn't moved
uh,
on. And I would ask you to show yourself grace. This is
uh,
not a journey that we get a roadmap for specific to our situation. We don't know
yeah.
how to do it. Show yourself
Uh,
grace because that's
uh,
what God is all about. He is a gracious,
yes.
good God.
Oh, I love that. So, Gay, how can our listeners stay connected to you?
Oh, I'd love that. My website is gaylindfors.com. On Facebook, you will find me at Gaye Lindfors Author. And on Instagram, I'm Gaye Lindfors. Would love to stay
I
connected.
love that. I love that. And I'm sure there's links to your books. And you have got some pretty fun and very helpful uh pieces of information that they can download from your website too. I've
Yes,
been kind of poking around, and
yes.
so I will put all of that in the show notes so that the listeners can just go down to the show notes and click and find you. And I would say go out there and follow Gay on social media, and go in and sign up for her newsletter. She has a very encouraging newsletter that she sends out regularly.
Mhm,
And pick up that new book. Pick up. I don't have a copy of Getting My Ducks in a Row. I'm going to go get that today because I think the title intrigues me.
mhm,
Well, I like to close every show, Gay, by asking my guests the same question, and that is, care taking care of yourself is so
mhm,
important. In fact, when we get off of this right now, I'm headed over to get my hair cut and colored because that's just
mhm,
one of the things I do to take care of myself. So this morning when I woke up, like I do every morning, I'm like, what am I going to do today to take care of me?
mhm.
It was very easy to look at my calendar and go, oh, there it is. I'm going to go get my hair cut and colored and get this blue put back in there. The
It's
listeners can't
pretty,
see it, but
pretty.
I have a blue streak of hair here. Um and I like to close every show by asking my guests, "What are you, Gay, gonna do in the next 24 hours to take care of you?"
I'm going to go for a walk.
I
Mhm.
love that.
Yep.
I love that. I love that. The walking is so good. Well, Gay, thank you so much for joining us today. I just adore your smile, and I'm sorry the listeners can't see it. Go check out her website. And I will put all the links to your website, social media, and your books. I like to put the link to the Amazon author page and encourage them to follow you.
Great.
So they can find you. And when a new book comes out, then they get notified. I appreciate each of you listeners. Our journey as caretakers can be hard. And as we've shared today, we can get caught up in so many different emotions and feelings, and we have a tendency to isolate and lose that community and feel like we're all alone. And as Gay said, we're not alone.
Mhm,
In fact, there's 55 million unpaid caregivers in the United States alone. I'm one, Gay's one.
mhm.
We're not alone. We are a community, and our community exists so that you know that you are loved and seen by the Almighty God. And He, as Gay said so clearly, He's not forgotten you, He sees you. If you would like to know more about my personal caretaking journey, the links to my website, social media, and my book, Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy, will also be in the show notes. And I will be back next week for another meaningful conversation about what the caretaker's journey looks like. And until then, it's all about